Welcome to Hockey Eastern Ontario's Rule of the Week, where each week we talk about a rule from the Hockey Canada rulebook, including what the rule is and how it's applied in a real game situation. Before we get started, just a reminder to like this video and subscribe to the channel so that you get all the latest content. This week, we're going to be talking about a situation where a referee has a penalty, but is unable to identify the player. What should he or she do about that? Stay tuned. Okay, so here's the situation. The referee has a penalty to a player, or a linesman is reporting a penalty to a referee, but they're unable to identify who actually committed the infraction. What should they do? Let's take a look at the rule. Okay, so Rule 4.1c says, when the rules state that the manager or coach shall designate a player to serve a penalty, and the manager or coach refuses to name a player, the referee shall name any player of the offending team to serve that penalty. So this one comes up periodically. We may have a situation where there's a penalty on the ice and the referee is not sure who to actually name for the penalty. And so they ask the coach or the manager, hey, can you let us know who that was so that we can make sure that the correct player is serving the penalty? Sometimes coaches will say, it's not my responsibility to tell you that. I don't have to tell you anything. And that's fine, they don't. But the reality is then another player is going to still serve that penalty. Who may or may not have actually committed the infraction. This is why we encourage coaches, managers to assist us with this so that a player doesn't sit a penalty that shouldn't have to. So let's say, for example, there's a situation on the bench where a team does something or says something to an official. So a player says something to one of the officials on the ice, it will call for a game misconduct, but they're unable to identify that player. In that case, a bench minor penalty is issued to the team. In the case where the player can be identified, a game misconduct penalty would be issued to the offending player. So what about situations where you have a major penalty? Let's say there's a high sticking penalty or a head contact penalty that will call for a major penalty in a game. And unfortunately, the referee or the linesman are unable to identify. Well, the first step is to go to the team and ask, okay, who was it? We didn't catch the player who committed the infraction, so we need to know who that player was. Oftentimes, the coach will just say, it was number 9. Okay, great. So number 9 serves the penalty. They would get a 5 minutes and a game misconduct for, say, head contact or high sticking or something of that nature. But there are situations where a coach will say, I don't have to tell you. Well, in that case, every effort should be made to identify the player who actually committed the infraction. Ideally, you want to get that player because they're the one that committed the infraction, and we don't want to penalize another player unnecessarily. Okay. Alternatively, if you're unable to identify the player, there is a specific rule for that, which I'll show you now. So Rule 4.13 under calling of penalties gives this situation. A player is injured by a high stick. This action is observed by a linesperson, but not the referee. The linesperson is unable to identify the offending player. The referee, after consulting with the captain of the offending team, shall select a player to serve the major penalty and a second player who will receive the game misconduct. Both players selected shall be from the ice at the time of the infraction. The referee should make every attempt to determine the identity of the guilty player before consulting the captain. So in this case, one player is going to serve the major and the other player is going to serve the misconduct penalty. This is not ideal. You want to get the player who committed the infraction to avoid having two players sit for the same infraction. This is why it's important as a referee to talk to your lines people to see if you can get the right player and to talk to the coach and the captain to see if you can identify the right player. It's only when they're not cooperative or you can't identify the right player that you need to give this misconduct to one team and to give the 5-minute major to another player on the same team. The key message we want to give to referees here is to be vigilant. Watch, stay focused on the player who commits an infraction and make sure that that player is penalized. Alternatively, for the lines people, you want to make sure that you also are watching who that player committed the infraction. If you're not sure, make sure you know the numbers of the players on the ice so that if we do have to take a player from the ice, we are able to get the right one. All that to say, it's important that referees work closely with our lines people, our coaches, our managers, our captains, our team players, so that we're able to identify the right players to serve the right penalties. Cooperation in this regard goes a long way. So there you have it. There's our rule of the week for this week. And in fact, our last rule of the week for this season. Before we go, I want to thank everyone who's tuned in to watch these videos. We hope you found them helpful. We also want to thank all of the volunteers, our coaches, our managers, our volunteers at the executive level for all the work you do during the season. We particularly want to thank all of the officials out there, our referees, our timekeepers, our lines people, everyone who's helped to make a challenging season easier. We know that we've been shorter officials this year, and everyone has worked really hard to step up to get those games covered. We can't thank you enough. Until next season, enjoy the rest of the year and stay safe.